If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it. If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
We have to remember these are human beings, they're people, so seeing them being used as political pawns one way or the other is very troubling to me.
What's up, folks? We have a great show for today. Donald Trump did a sit down with Sean Hannity where he said that the president has the power to just think about declassifying something, and that makes it declassified.
So let me ask you this question, because I think this is the next logical question, because the president of the United States, you, unlike, say, Hillary Clinton in her case,
right,
a president has the power to declassify.
Correct.
Okay. You had said on Truth Social a number of times you did declassify.
I did declassify, yes.
Okay. Is there a process? What was your process to declassify?
There doesn't have to be a process, as I understand it. You know, there's different people say different things, but as I understand, there doesn't have to be. If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
Let's listen to that whole segment.
Because you're sending it to Mar-a-Lago or to wherever you're sending it, and there doesn't have to be a process. There can be a process, but there doesn't have to be. You're the president. You make that decision. So when you send it, it's declassified. I declassified everything. Now, I declassified things, and we were having a lot of problems with NARA. You know, NARA is a radical left group of people running that thing, and when you send documents over there, I would say there's a very good chance that a lot of those documents will never be seen again. There's also a lot of speculation because of what they did, the severity of the FBI coming and raiding Mar-a-Lago. Were they looking for the Hillary Clinton emails that were deleted, but they are around someplace? Were they looking for the spying on Trump's...
You're not saying you had it.
No, they may be saying, they may have thought that it was in there.
Okay.
And a lot of people said the only thing that would give the kind of severity that they showed by actually coming in and raiding with many, many people is the Hillary Clinton deal, the Russia stuff, or... I mean, there are a number of things. The spying on Trump's campaign. So they spied on my campaign.
We're also going to talk about Stacey Abrams saying that the heartbeat at 6 weeks is a myth for abortion.
There is no such thing as a heartbeat at 6 weeks.
The heart typically beats about 113 times per minute.
It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body away from her.
And today on TV ran a cute segment calling a fetus a baby.
So the left is a baby in its resting state. And then on the right, you see how he smiles 20 minutes? The mom ate some carrots.
On the left with the...
They was just a resting state.
And showing their reaction to flavor. And last but not least, Jared Kushner, one of Trump's most powerful advisors, seems to be taking shots at Ron DeSantis for sending migrants to Martha's Vineyard.
We have to remember these are human beings, they're people, so seeing them being used as political pawns one way or the other is very troubling to me.
We'll talk about that to start the show, and then weigh in on much more. And I have a special guest today. Thanks for watching. The live starts now.
The Dream Rare Podcast, welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. It's the Dream Rare Podcast, welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles, yeah.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dream Rare Podcast. I have a special guest today to weigh in on the topics, Chad Jackson. Thanks for joining.
What's up, man? Yeah, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't even say anything yet, and I'm reading comments. I mean, I'm not trying to get sidetracked, but someone said, "You're an idiot. Stop bashing Trump." And I'm like, it's crazy how sensitive people are. I didn't even say anything yet. I just wrote a title and showed the clip. So it's like, if this is bashing him, I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely a lot of Trumptivists out there. I use that word. I just coined it. So, thank you, social media.
I just made a shirt on it. I just made money off your ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not giving you a percentage either. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the religion of Trump. I mean, the thing is, like, you can recognize that he was a fantastic president. He did a lot of things. I mean, he was the best president in my lifetime, that's for sure. But at the same time, like, you can't kiss the ring. You can't put men on a pedestal because at the end of the day, he's just a flawed person. And so the more you worship him and the more you glorify him as though he's God, I mean, like that's more of a you problem than it is, you know, an anomaly problem, if that makes sense.
Hey, appreciate it. That's my PR team now, Chad. I pay them big bucks to defend me. No, but jokes aside, I want to play this Kushner clip real quick, and then we'll weigh in on that Trump, Hannity interview. So here's that Kushner clip for those who just joined.
We have to remember these are human beings, they're people, so seeing them being used as political pawns one way or the other is very troubling to me.
So that seems like he's taking a jab at Ron DeSantis, and he's taking this left-wing, like, liberally stance of like, oh, these are human. Oh yeah, I'm sure they're struggling in Martha's Vineyard. You know, what a rough life for these migrants. But real quick, I want to show you, because I thought this was a really good tweet from Jesse Kelly, and I just wanted to show it to the audience. It says, honest question, does anyone know if Trump has said or signaled anything about his intentions with this person, talking about Jared Kushner? Meaning, is this human being going to be within 1,000 miles of the White House if Trump gets elected again? Honestly asking. And I want to say this real quick. You know, I like Jesse Kelly. I tend to like his takes on Twitter quite a bit. And everybody's kind of scared in the right-wing conservative and Trump world, even people that voted for him multiple times, where he's like, I'm not being a dick, I'm not being rude, I'm not hating on Trump, but he's like, honest question, like, has anybody asked Donald Trump if Jared Kushner is going to be in the White House again if he gets elected? And here's my take on it, is nobody really knows what's going to happen next time, because obviously Biden's bad, Biden's worse, the Democrats suck, Jeb Bush sucks, Liz Cheney sucks, Mitt Romney sucks. We get it. There's rhinos out there that are phony. But nobody really asks Trump these questions. I mean, there is no right-wing journalist who says, if you get reelected, are you going to put Jared Kushner back in the White House? If you get reelected, are you going to put a pharmacy lobbyist in the White House? Are you friends with Bill Gates? Because it seems like you took his 2018 universal flu vaccine agenda and passed it through executive order. You know, it's hard to really know who Trump's going to be in 2024 when it comes to some of his mistakes or shortcomings, because I feel like there's either you're a Trump hater and you're just drooling at the mouth to make him look bad, or these people call you an idiot if you even speculate on him. Like, how are we ever going to know what he's going to do in office if nobody asks him these questions?
Yeah, and that tweet is really a bold tweet. I mean, the fact that he even has to preface it like, hey, I'm asking an honest question. You know what I mean? Like, let's be adults for once. I mean, it's a shame because, again, people get so sensationalized. And it's interesting because it's like, on the one hand, conservatives, which, you know, I'm one, but conservatives, like, we like to talk about how we are for liberty. We are pro-Constitution. We are pro, you know, a free republic. So we like to talk about those things on the one hand, but then on the other hand, we'll do exactly what the left does, which is to deify these men who are capable of slipping up, you know, from time to time, and acting as if they're, you know, what doesn't stink. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you can't preserve your republic if you're going to flock to or basically put all of your ideals and hopes in a single person, whether that person be Trump, Ron DeSantis, so on and so forth. If you're going to preserve your republic, you have to hold your government accountable. Right. You have to be able to question your government if and when they're doing things that are, you know, kind of suspect. When it comes to Jared Kushner, it's hard for me to decipher whether or not he has some kind of agenda in what he said, or whether he just was a coward in the lion's den. In other words, he met a question that basically pressed him a little bit, and rather than standing up bold for the truth, he decides to give this little milquetoast answer of like, well, we got to treat them like people. Well, the fact of the matter is, you have places like Martha's Vineyard, you have places like Washington, D.C., and other blue states and blue municipalities who claim to be sanctuary cities or sanctuary states. Right. And so they're the ones that are claiming to be receptive and tolerant and all these different things. Right. And DeSantis has made it clear that Florida is not a sanctuary state. It's just not. And so because it's not a sanctuary state, we're going to bus these people to the places that are claiming to be sanctuary places. And so I don't see, I mean, you can call that political all you want, and obviously it is if we're being honest, but at the same time, you know, we're basically, you know, adhering to what your ideology is. So what's the problem, you know?
Right. Buddha Sean, I just like this comment, so I put it on the screen. He said, why did Trump pressure the FDA and the CDC to rush vaccine rollouts? If you hear Trump talk about it, he does say that he rushed the FDA and rushed Fauci because he wanted it out sooner. Here's the thing, Buddha Sean, great question. This is what I'm saying, and kind of what Jesse Kelly was saying, is like, we don't really know, because it's been broken down into these binaries. Either you're this left-wing Trump hater and all they do is hate on the guy and they make no sense, or you just rush to his defense all the time. So there is no really intellectual discussion like, hey, I voted for you. I like you better than Biden. I think you're better than Jeb Bush. But why did you rush the FDA? I mean, it's worth a question. Or like with the Jared Kushner situation, some people like him, some people don't. I think he seems like a nice guy on the front, but as far as political influence, I don't know who the guy is, if he shares my values or what, these are great questions for a journalist to ask, but it's hard to even ask the questions because, most people in the comments are saying nice things, and I'm not sensitive to that. I don't care, but I do see some people saying Trump derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, not at all. I'm pretty sure me and Chad voted for him last time,
both times.
Yeah, you did both times. I didn't the first time. I would have if I knew what I knew now. But in general, this is not derangement syndrome. It's just like we're trying to navigate through and hold Trump accountable like a politician, where if you get into office, who is going to be your cabinet? Is it going to be Pompeo, Kushner, pharmacy lobbyists? Are you going to put Tucker Carlson at the Secretary of State? There's a big difference between Pompeo and I don't even know if Tucker wants to run, but you got Trump has a lot of great supporters, and he's got a lot of bad people he surrounded himself by. So I think it's fair if his voting base, instead of just babying him all the time, says, who are you going to be in 2024? Which route are you going to go? Because there's a lot of great options for you to choose from, but we don't know if you're going to choose good people because it didn't seem like you did last time.
Yeah.
I want to say for the main argument, or rather the main discussion, that clip at the beginning, I know you heard it. Trump basically made the statement on Hannity that, you can declassify anything you want as a president. I think that is true. And then he said, which is the new controversy of the day, you can declassify just by thinking about it. If you think about it, it's now declassified. I'm no legal expert, and I'll save my opinion for after, but what do you think about that? It's nice to get another opinion.
Yeah, so I was actually reading the Presidential Records Act prior to coming on this live, and the language surrounding the process by which to declassify records is really kind of vague. And so Trump, we all know him to sometimes fly by the seat of his pants or shoot from the hip, and this could very well be construed as one of those moments, but at the same time, it could very well be that he was advised by his counsel that, this is kind of an angle. And we all know that lawyers try to find a way to either interpret or evade, certain, legal language or the Constitution. And so it could very well be one of those situations. But the fact of the matter is, I think you alluded to this, and I've seen other people allude to this as well, that when it comes to basically they're trying to get Trump on a technicality, right? You have the processes by which, a person has to deal with or throw away or turn over to archivists government notes, whether the notes was written by the hand of President Trump or somebody in his administration, so on and so forth. You have to either classify it as a personal note or I forget what the language is, but there's basically two ways in which you can categorize it. One goes to the archivist. The other is considered like a personal thing that has nothing to do with official government business.
Right.
And so if it is the latter, then you have the ability to throw it away, dispose of it, whatever. However, if it's the former, you have to turn it over to an archivist. They will classify it, and then at some point it will be automatically declassified at some date in the future. But the fact of the matter is, are we really to believe that Trump is the first president who broke course with this particular act? No, they're trying to get him on a technicality, and that's very obvious that that's what's going on. And so you would hope that his counsel is advising him well in terms of, when he goes into the public eye, the things that's coming out of his mouth, because, you don't want anything can be used against you, obviously, in the court of law. So you don't want him to put his foot in his mouth for sure.
Right. It's interesting because, they say life isn't fair, and say you're born to a wealthy family and then someone else is born to a poor family or vice versa. At a certain point, you do have a different path, and you could look at it as a blessing and say, I'm going to have a tougher path, but it's going to build character. When it comes to being conservative in America, or just not a Democrat, not a liberal, not a phony, not a sellout, not a puppet, we don't have the same set of rules, not for our protests, not for our, failed protests that get uglier, not for anything. So at the end of the day, it's not fair. Life isn't fair. I'm not making excuses for it, but we have lost the education system. We've lost the culture. We've lost a lot of the government, and it doesn't seem to treat us fair. Now that we know that, it's not to say it's right. I think you're totally right about saying that if Obama or Bush or someone that was more likable to the establishment perhaps did that, they would probably overlook it and not care. But it's interesting because while it's such a gray area, right, you looked into it and it's like it doesn't really say either way, or it says it in a way that could be misconstrued in different ways. Why would you, and this is just my take as a leader and as somebody that knows you're under the fire, why would you just think something and take a classified document? I'm not saying I want him to be charged, but it's like, I guess maybe, this is a legal battle that you just thought it and took it, but wouldn't you, as a president that they're trying to catch on technicalities, wouldn't you want to stand in a room with a lawyer and declare it or record it so this way you knew this classified document's unclassified? It sounds a little crazy to me that if Obama were to say that, I just took a bunch of classified documents and I just, you could just think it's declassified and it's declassified. I mean, it sounds pretty stupid to me. As somebody that voted for him, I'm like, that doesn't sound like the smartest way to declassify something, especially if you're conservative and they're looking to get you.
This might seem a little irrelevant, but follow my riff, if you will. So would you parallel that to whenever Bill Clinton tried to say, well, I didn't actually have sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky. You know what I mean? He basically tried to change the definition on the fly of what oral sex was, and saying that it's not real sex or what have you. So do you think that it's a kind of same thing, or what say you?
I mean, it's a funny bit comparison. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I guess in certain ways, if you're trying to not get caught doing something, you're going to word it in a way where you're like, I technically didn't do that, but I did do that, where, when it comes to classified documents, I'm guessing it's a massive gray area where if you make it clear, you're probably in the clear, but if you choose to go the path of not fully saying it, then I think you're going to, eventually, it's just something that probably would have taken him 5 minutes to clear and none of this would happen, but doing it that way leaves the door open to probably what's going on now.
Yeah, to get really real though, like I feel like when it comes to the fact that you have the FBI, you have the Department of Justice, you have basically the Biden administration who is legitimately going after President Trump and trying to pin anything they can on him so as to prevent him from, having the permission, if you will, to run for president in 2024. That should be very alarming to the American people with regard to, like, look, this is legitimately the depths that political parties and Biden in particular are willing to go to prevent, their political adversaries from, winning an election against them fair and square. And so I guess my question for you is, do you think that there's enough American people who are alarmed by that to make a difference? Or do you think people are kind of, I guess, in a stupor due to the propaganda of it all?
It's a good question. I think there's enough numbers now, and I'm not saying I have a full solution to it, but I think conservatives and Republicans have enough numbers if they have good leadership to do it. Like, for instance, with social media, there's Truth, there's Parler, Rumble's picking up steam. I understand things don't happen overnight, but if you could take Truth, Parler, Rumble, merge them all together, and then get a leader that everybody respects, say, hey, we're all going to go here and we're going to try to compensate you for leaving and make it happen, I think we could end social media companies overnight, but we don't have that kind of clear leadership. When it comes to people that support Trump and support his ideas, or at least the ideas that he ran on in 2016, I think there's enough people, and this is kind of my beef with Trump now, is I feel like at first his leadership was really impressive and amazing, and I'm like, wow, this guy is crushing it, I could never do that. And now, like, compared to someone like a Ron DeSantis, I think DeSantis is somebody that thinks about all legal options. I think I'm not saying he's perfect, but he plans everything out. He knows how they operate. He's got a great team around him. He doesn't hire phonies for the most part. And then he executes knowing, like, he's playing chess. I think DeSantis is thinking 5 steps ahead. I think Trump is shooting from the hip, which is awesome in some ways, but I really do at this point think his leadership's so sloppy that he's just going to keep getting people in trouble. And I think, like, and this is just my opinion, a real leader admits to their mistakes. A real leader will say, hey, I probably shouldn't have locked down, like DeSantis said, if I would have had, I don't think he's that type of person. I think he's someone that's going to keep screwing up and just sacrificing his supporters. Like, oh, you come here to yell at Mike Pence, oh, you get in trouble. Marjorie Taylor Greene's been really outspoken about political prisoners, and so have a lot of people. There's people that supported Trump that were there to support him that are stuck in prison, and they haven't even had a trial, but he doesn't seem to really care that much. So, I think there are enough people that know what they're doing is wrong to him, but I just don't think that he's the leader that's going to change anything. And I think if, the right person came along and got everybody to focus on something that mattered in energy wise, we could change everything. It's just we don't have that right now.
Yeah. And I know we got to move the show along, but as far as you're saying that there needs to be a leader or somebody to stand up, I guess, with an organizational kind of mindset in kind of compiling or consolidating these, people like yourself and others into these kind of platforms to kind of be this voice. Do you see any kind of potential downfall to having a kind of centralized leader in that way?
For sure.
Does that question make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always, whatever they say, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So I think there's always a risk to being that person. But honestly, I think there are people, like Trump is that guy right now. It's not like he hasn't stuck his neck out there. He's stuck his neck further than anyone's ever stuck out. He deserves praise and appreciation for that. But it's like, okay, now that now that you were in office for 3 years, what did you do in the 4th year? In 2021, I talk about this often, but I think that really showed his true character. He's out of office, right? He doesn't have to really lead. He can golf and hang out more and, take a break, which he deserves. What was his leadership like in 2021 when he didn't have the presidency, when he was banned off social media? I mean, if I got banned from social media, I'm just going to say wilder stuff because now I have zero limitations. I mean, I say what I want now, but you have literally no reason to filter yourself. And he spent most of his energy, if you compile all his interviews from 2021, what was his messaging? It was the vaccine's amazing. I did it. I rushed it. So that just shows me it's like his number one concern in 2021 is taking credit for a COVID vaccine while Ron DeSantis is running around desperately fighting mandates. So it's like, I think he already is that centralized leader. I think he stuck his neck out there and he controls the movement. I just don't know where he's going. So I'll defend him against false accusations. I'll defend him against, but at a certain point, it's like someone wrote in the comment section, I'm getting exhausted defending him. I'll defend someone to the death if I think it's the right thing to do. But it's like, bro, you couldn't have taken 2 minutes to declare these documents classified. I've talked to people too that aren't just like riding his coattails, and it's like, yeah, technically there's a technicality where I think he should get off of, but they're like, he was advised multiple times to have a room filled with lawyers and do it the safe way, but he doesn't do it, he didn't want to do it. So it's like now, at what point, I guess for me, I'm like, I listen to people like Matt Walsh, who I think is actually having a cultural impact, and he's saying DeSantis 2024. Why? Anybody with half a brain that gets what's going on, I think, realizes that, at a certain point, this isn't going anywhere. But who knows? Yeah, I guess.
But what you said earlier about, giving credit where credit is due with regard to Trump, but being able to, at the same time, question him about certain directions that he's going that doesn't really seem like it's beneficial for the American people. I think therein lies the problem when it comes to the conservative base, and that's where I think the turbulence is and the friction is when you have people who support Trump but are willing to hold him accountable versus people who support Trump and believe that everything that comes out of his mouth is right and every decision that he makes is right. Asking no questions whatsoever. And so that's where that friction is. And so I think that the determining factor for myself, as somebody who is a Christian, is you have to understand that at the end of the day, Trump is just a man. And because he's a man, he's a flawed individual. And with power comes pride. And with pride comes this ability, or not this ability, but this kind of danger of thinking that, you know, I don't know, it's power corrupts you, I guess is a simple way of putting it. And so you need that that factor that's willing to hold you accountable, to keep you down to earth, to keep you on the straight and narrow. Because if all you ever have are individuals who are going to validate you, whatever decision that you make, then that's the making and the ingredients for doom. You know what I mean? I don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, if you're left, or if you're right. If you have a base that supports you every step of the way, insofar that they're not willing to question you or correct you, then that will end in a very unfortunate way, no matter who it is.
Right, that's just human psychology. I wanted to just point to this real quick, and then we can move on in a little, but no rush, really. He's saying Democrats. So, and I don't care if you accuse me. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a registered Republican. I would argue that I'm further right-wing, like economically, even socially, than Trump and his administration. But this is kind of the dynamic that people have been conditioned to. It's like, if you question that side, you must be like Mitt Romney, or you must be a Democrat. But here's a message that I was pushing in 2020 and 2021. In 2020, under Trump, Mitch McConnell, Pelosi, Democrats, and Republicans, they printed upwards of $6 trillion, if not more. They did more than Karl Marx could have ever dreamed of. They did a universal basic income check where they gave everybody $1,600. They locked the country down. Republicans were mostly in on it. They gave $18 billion to big pharma in a socialist, taxpayer funded scheme to give these corrupt corporations money that they don't need. They've already made more money than they've gotten in profits, and they're not sharing it with you. They're all suing each other for more money. So it's like, I'm actually more conservative, where I'm like, yeah, I don't care if you like Trump or hate Trump or voted for him or not. At the end of the day, like Republicans in 2020 became full-blown socialists. They printed too much money. They gave taxpayer money to big pharma. They enabled all this corruption, and I think it's wrong. But if I say that, I must be a Democrat, right? Because I'm further right than Trump. Or if I, like Jesse Kelly said, I have questions, and I know a lot of MAGA influencers, they just want to hang out and sell merch and not question the guy. But I think, Chad, you're completely right, where, if you surround yourself by yes men, you want loyal people. But that's the dynamic, I think, of the Trump movement. And it's almost like you're going to help him fail. And when he fails, it's going to be his base's fault, not just his fault, because instead of asking him who he's going to surround himself by, instead of challenging him, instead of saying, hey, Mr. President, like, I'm not going to say specifics, but I've heard it's just like, people are like, people told him all these things that he's dealing with now. They tried to warn him, but Trump don't listen to anybody, where it's sometimes it plays in his advantage, but when he's wrong, he's so stubborn. And it's like, you could act like, oh, let's not question anything. And it's like, but he's going to crash and burn, because that's just how, leadership works. I think you're right about that.
I agree.
We'll move on, and we'll get some of your comments, whether you agree or disagree with us. We're going to talk about them. So just put them on the, someone said you need to start questioning your current president, you twit. I mean, I'm going to move on in a second, but look you're calling me a twit. You're being very rude and nasty, Tanya. But it's like, I question Biden all the time. I believe I did multiple live streams about him this week. I think he's the worst president ever. But this is how brainwashed people are. Well, Biden's bad, so we just got to not question our own side. I like to play sports, and I always try to explain to people at halftime, you don't go to the other benches, the other team's bench, and say, you guys suck, you guys suck. That's not what makes a good team. A good team sits at halftime and says, hey, we're down a few points. We're good people, but you got to play better defense. You got to play better offense. You got to figure out, how you're passing the ball. A team holds themselves accountable. Democrats have gotten so bad because they just point to the right wing and say the right sucks so much and we're so great. And the Democrats are like beyond evil now. The right wing under Trump is becoming that. It's becoming a shell of what it was in 2018, because it's a bunch of sycophants who say, oh, you're a Democrat and a twit if you question Trump and just question Biden. I question Biden all the time. I'd never vote for him. But at the end of the day, it becomes controlled opposition when Oh, I'm not supposed to question Ted Cruz when he's a total joke. I can't question Dan Crenshaw. Oh, you're fine with that, but I can't question Trump. Trump is the quarterback of the Republican Party right now, and I think he's failing. So if I'm not supposed to question that, I don't understand why you expect success. You deserve failure. I mean, the Trump administration in 2020 ended in lockdowns and vaccine sales, and he proudly ran around the country doing the bidding of Bill Gates. That's not a red flag to you. You don't deserve freedom. You don't deserve liberty. If I point out that Republicans printed $6 trillion and did a lot of what Karl Marx wrote in the Communist Manifesto, and you call me a Democrat, you got duped. You know, both parties are in on it. And the guy that told you he was going to fight the swamp filled up the swamp. Now, as a team, if we're on the same team, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to end in a lockdown again? Do we want to let people like, all of Trump's appointees run the show? Or are you going to challenge this guy and say, hey, I'm going to vote for you again in 2024, but who's going to run your administration? Is it going to be Kushner, Pompeo, Christopher Wray, Bill Barr, Mike Pence? Oh, Mike Pence sucks. Who put him there? It's like you baby Donald Trump so much. I hate Mike Pence. I never liked Mike Pence. I mean, he was cool for a minute, but I always knew he was establishment. But it's like if your guy's hiring a bunch of establishment politicians and he puts an establishment politician as his vice president, are you ever going to question the source of where this is coming from? Or are you just going to baby him forever? So I don't mind the backlash. I enjoy it and thrive off it, but I'm not doing this to be a Democrat. I'm not doing this to be a jerk. And I certainly am not saying Biden's better than Trump, but if you think you're going to have success in the Republican Party by just pointing at Joe Biden and that's gonna work, keep buying Trump merch on these goofy right-wing pages that literally never say anything interesting.
Yeah, and you make such a great point. And I think we have to. I think we have to actually call it for what it is. Like, politics is a religion in America. It just is, and I think Tanya just proved that. Like, politics is a religion in America. And so for me, whenever I look at these past, 2 years since Biden has been in office, and I look at Trump and I look at DeSantis, I see DeSantis making moves. Although I'm not completely happy with a lot of the policies that he pushed, if I'm looking at it comparatively, it seems like DeSantis is making decisions that, in a sense, gives power back to the people and minimizes the government control. And so he's actually standing up against a lot of that. He's like, the first 2 years of Trump, if we're being honest, and as far as his presidency goes. Whereas Trump, by comparison, when it comes to the vaccine, when it comes to some of the things that he's done, seems to be, kind of feeding into the establishment, if you will. And so, if the past 2 years accounts for anything, it becomes blatantly obvious that if it is my desire as an American citizen to get back to a constitutional republic and to minimize government control and to minimize the likelihood of a government mandating vaccines and certain things that I think is an expansion of government power, which one, Trump or DeSantis, have proven to be also loyal to that same cause? Are we objectively honest enough to answer that question in a real way? Or have we made Trump a god? Have we made the Republican Party a god to where we can't even be honest with these types of questions?
Right, and I went to Turning Point USA and I watched a Trump speech and a DeSantis speech, and it was night and day. Like, there's no denying that Trump is very charismatic and funny and a great speaker and just a great entertainer. No question. Okay, I'm not a liar. He's great. But DeSantis' speech, I could feel it in my soul. And I'm not saying DeSantis is your best friend. I'm not saying to just worship him either. But I could feel I could tell when somebody means what they say. And DeSantis is all, here's what I did for you. 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 I strategically thought about how to get stuff done. I'm not here to just talk. I'm about actions. I fought the mandates. I stood up for Special Olympians. I stood up for nurses. It's all like things that mattered to me and I cared about. And I'm like, wow, I'm not one to just go mushy over a speech, but I'm like, honestly, that was, he exceeded my expectations. And at the end, he said some really great stuff. And I'm like, that was a good speech. And I could tell, regardless of what you think of DeSantis, he was just nailing these things of here's what I did for you. And basically saying, it's not about me, it's about all of us. And he didn't say it in a corny way. He said it in a way that actually inspired me. I was like, that was dope. And when I watch Trump, it's all about him. He's a big clown. He's like, I tried to give myself a presidential Medal of Freedom. They said I couldn't give myself one. And it's like, it was just so goofy where I'm like, he didn't talk about mandates. He didn't talk about anything that mattered in the new normal, the great reset that they're ushering in. Nothing to counter that at all. Just these old stories about himself where I'm like, and here's the point that I'm trying to make to MAGA. If you buy into the cult of personality and you worship him as a person, you deserve failure because you're not looking for somebody that's going to correct their mistakes. You're not looking for somebody that's going to really push forward. You're buying into this like clown story where it's like DeSantis is making it clear, listen, I'm operating off, I'm going for these things, and Trump's making it clear it's about me and I'm just this guy. And it's like, he has no one even knows who he's going to hire. Nobody asks him these questions. Hannity will never ask him. Nobody in right-wing media asks him. We don't even know. It's like, it's the weirdest thing. We all acknowledge that he surrounded himself by bad people, but apparently only me, Jesse Kelly, and Matt Walsh want to ask the guy, are you going to choose different people this time? Because people just assume that Trump's going to do that. But I know Alex Jones recently said he wanted Trump to stop bragging about the vaccine so much, and Trump's team reached out to him and said, Alex, he's never going to stop bragging about it. He loves it. He thinks it's great. He's the big pharma guy now, and he wants you and all these people to shut up. And that's the type of person Trump is. I don't care if people disagree with me, because what I say is going to age like fine wine. He doesn't want to be challenged. He doesn't want to be asked questions. He wants his base to roll over like dogs and just assume he's going to do the right thing, and he's going to do the same exact thing he did from 2016 to 2020. He's going to fall short again because he knows his base is obedient like puppies. He knows they're going to roll over, and anytime somebody doesn't roll over, he has his team tell them, get out of my way, shut up, don't question me. You know what I'm saying? Just let me do it. So, the reason nobody asks him these questions in the right-wing media is because if they did ask him the question, his team would tell them to shut their mouth. He's not interested in changing. And they do it because they want trips to Mar-a-Lago and they want to sell MAGA sweaters and make money. And that's where the base is going. So, the proof is there. Yeah.
100%. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Let's get to the other topic, and then we're going to talk about something that we've been meaning to. Real quick, there was this clip of Stacey Abrams where she said that the heartbeat is like, just a talking point from right-wingers and that it's a joke. And then NBC News, which runs a show called Today or The Morning Show or something, they ran a clip on their social media today where they showed a little face of a fetus, and after it ate something, it was like smiling. So they were referring to it not as a fetus too, they were referring to it as a baby. So I just think it's interesting left-wing media is admitting that it is a baby, or they're calling it a baby now, as the candidates that they support are running around telling people that at 6 weeks, it doesn't have a heartbeat. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Oh, I thought you were gonna play the clip again.
Oh no, I don't. Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have it loaded up. You're good.
Okay. Yeah. It's absurd. I think now's the time for us to start using these leftist tactics against them and start, beating them at their own game, namely calling Stacey Abrams a fascist. Because again, these are the same tactics that the Nazis used, are they not? Where they basically dehumanized certain people in order to sorry about that, let me take that off. But yeah, they dehumanize certain people in order to justify treating them like they weren't humans. The same can be argued for slavery around the world. And so you have to dehumanize the individual in order to get the public to go along with doing inhumane things to said group of people. And so that's exactly what Stacey Abrams is doing, where she's trying to justify and use certain rhetoric so as to dismiss and to belittle the life of the human being in the womb, while at the same time, to your point, you do have certain leftists who are at least willing to admit, oh, this is a baby, but they didn't realize what they were doing though, or what they were saying. You know what I mean? They were just having a human moment, and right. Of course, once the abortion debate comes back up, I'm sure those same people will be trying to find a way to justify killing babies in the womb. So that's exactly what's going on.
And on the left wing and the right wing, I try to explain it like this, because I know there's people that have had abortions and believe it's good. Some people have had them and they don't agree with them anymore. You know, God bless everybody. But I try to make this example. On the right wing and in the Republican Party, there is actually a lot of different opinions about abortion. A lot of Christians and a lot of conservatives think it begins at conception, right? That's definitely a very popular thought. A lot of people are passing these heartbeat bills where they're saying you can get an abortion up to 6 weeks, but once it has a heartbeat, you can't do it anymore. And then you have some people that are even further in, like, you know, maybe 7, 8, 9 weeks. Like, there is a lot of discussion in the right, and it's not just this settled thing like that everybody believes the same thing. But here's why I think the left has no brain or no soul. I'm not really sure which one, or they've been duped. Is, okay, on the right wing, we're all trying to figure out a line, right? It's the line begins at conception, the line begins at heartbeat. But there is a conversation about that being had. On the left wing, the Democrats are just pushing it further and further, where they don't want to draw a line. You watch Ralph Northam say, well, we can resuscitate the baby and then make a decision. So it's like, so the mother can kill the kid now, because resuscitating a baby means it's alive. And, you know, that's what the word keeping it alive, resuscitate. And then now you want to kill that. You know, Stacey Abrams doesn't draw a line either. So it's like, you know, as much as I know a lot of people are like, I want abortions, it's pro-choice. Honestly, like, you got to come to terms that the Democrats are, they're not drawing a line with abortion. They're not drawing a line with crime. They're always like, at least the Republican will tell you how they feel about crime. The Democrats will say we're you know, they'll be defunding the police, but then they back the police 2 years later when it's convenient. They don't believe in border walls. They think it's racist. And then Karine Jean-Pierre, press secretary, says, you know, we're doing a better job with the wall than Trump, and we're finishing it because he couldn't even finish it. So now they're more pro-border than Trump. It's like the Democrats are like the friend who stabs you in the back. The Republicans are usually, not always, you know, stab people in the front. So I think, you know, when it comes to this abortion debate, it is complex to a lot of people, but the Democrats simply, you know, just don't draw a line. Republicans are trying to figure out the line, and Democrats are like, no line, so it's going to end badly.
But one of the things that they're really good at, Democrats and leftists, or whatever you want to call them, is they say the most absurd, bizarre things. And what happens is you have folks on the right who act as kind of reactionaries to the absurd things, and rightly so, I guess, depending on who's saying what. And then over time, those absurdities become normative. Ayn Rand talked about that, and she was absolutely right. And so it wouldn't surprise me if 4 or 5 years from now, that becomes a kind of cardinal belief within left-wing progressivism, that the heartbeat of an infant in the womb is a myth, or, you know what I mean? So it's just crazy how these things tend to go and tend to work out. And it's very indicative of the fact that we do live in a postmodern society, where the so-called expert class has been deified as gods among men. And regardless of what the expert class says, whether it's rooted in truth or mere politics, we have to go along with them because they have the degrees and they're liked and they're very popular. And so that's exactly what's going on. They have managed to make Stacey Abrams a woman of credibility and validation. Right. It's not rooted in any kind of truth. It's not rooted in the fact that she's a particularly impressive person. She just happens to be a woman who's able to put together sentences and who ran a semi-successful campaign in Georgia. And so because of those reasons alone, and because she had the endorsement of Oprah Winfrey, they're, you know, treating her like she's this kind of amazing person. And so anything that emits from her mouth must be true, or it must have some basis in truth. And so, again, it won't be very long before the so-called expert class begin to follow suit and saying the absurd things that she's saying right now, as though these things are normal and, you know, worthy to be taught in public schools.
Right. And I want to, before we move to our last topic, just remind people that a lot of people, especially the younger Democrats or even some of the older ones, but especially like the kids, you don't look at them. And this is where I do have a little bit of beef with Republicans, because or at least a lot of Republican influencers, all they ever do is make fun of left-wingers and demonize them and laugh at like chicks. And it's like, dude, you're a 35-year-old guy and you're bashing an 18-year-old woman. You know what I'm saying? Like at a college. I don't agree with her, but I feel bad for her. Who were her parents? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Her parents failed her. The schools failed her. If you don't look at a 19-year-old girl and feel bad when they're so brainwashed, I mean, it's kind of like, this is why nobody likes conservatives and Republicans in mainstream media, because you guys are just dicks and you're not even making good arguments. You're just like, ha, 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 ha. It's like, bro, if you're 40 and you're making fun of a 19-year-old, you're pathetic. I don't care if you share the same politics or religion as me. So long story short, you know, when someone's that young, remember yourself when you were that young. You know, did you know everything you know now when you were 19 or 20 or 21? I'm not saying you can't joke about some of the dumb things they're doing. Have a little bit of compassion and empathy and try to make an argument that makes sense to them. I have 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds all the time that are left-wing, right-wing. They come and say, hey, I actually like your channel. I'm left-wing, but I like your Instagram page because you make sense. You know, you're not a dick. You're not just like annoying me, and I listen to what you say and I can't disprove it. So you've taught me a lot. You're the one that made me, you know, there's this one chick who always is on my Twitter. She's like, this is the video that anomaly turned me from a blue-haired liberal into like a conservative chick. And now she's like super conservative. You don't do it by making fun of them. It's like these pathetic losers on the right, no offense, that are like, ha, 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 ha. It's like, bro, you're a grown man, dude, you know, making fun of a college student. Don't let them just be wrong. But it's like, at what point are you just trying to sell merch and lose in slow motion wearing a cowboy hat? And at what point are you really trying to, you know, get to the culture? And I'm going to let you talk in a second, Chad, but I just want to plug your film that's out now. And he didn't even ask me to do this. I just want to. Uncle Tom 2, where it's a documentary. I mean, it's an in-depth kind of discussion about what's going on that's not surface level. So that's one way to do it, documentary content. But try to win, you know, these people that are misled and try to show them the light. Don't just constantly bop them on the head like you're playing whack-a-mole and expect them to like you. They're not going to.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% with what you're saying. I mean, you see it all the time on social media. People, you know, feel the need to slam dunk on someone who has different, you know, views than they do. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, there's definitely a classy way of doing it and going about it that doesn't make you come off as just pathetic. And unfortunately, there are a lot of, you know, so-called conservatives who are very cringy and pathetic with the way that they try to go after their political adversaries, for sure.
And I mean, I know one of my biggest Facebook videos ever was why Trump's not that bad. And it got 20 million views. I mean, honestly, I've been told it inspired some of your favorite conservatives who came out and did the same thing. They're like, dude, Anomaly, that was the video that got me there. I've met a lot of people that are like, dude, that was the one that changed it. And the reason that video was so successful is because I wasn't coming at it from a perspective of saying, hey, you suck, you're an idiot, I'm right, you're a libtard. I mean, I'll make fun of leftists sometimes. It's funny, but I did it from a place of empathy and compassion. I said, listen, this is my real story. I'm not a lifelong conservative. I mean, maybe my mom raised me conservative and I didn't know it, but when I went to school, I became more left-wing and I bought into a lot of propaganda and Leonardo DiCaprio videos. So I did it from the sense of like, hey, I'm not somebody who just shills for Trump all the time, but I'm going to tell you why he's actually better than you think. And I met people that work, I'm not even going to say, but their parents work at major left-wing media companies, and they came to me and their kid said, hey, my mom used to watch CNN and now she watches Fox because of you. And I've never told people to watch Fox, but it's just like they watch TV and they decided to tune into right-wing media. So as many people want to get mad at me when they're like, you question Trump, you criticize Trump, that's why I've been able to get millions of people to see your side of the point of view, is because they don't look at me like, oh, Anomaly's just another one of these losers selling Trump merch who has no soul, who just hates all the time or just says stuff that's like trendy and catchy and just like sounds like a talking head. That's why it works so good. So, you know, I don't care if people criticize me. It doesn't bother me. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, there's probably people that you watch and think are better than me that behind closed doors will be like, yo, Anomaly's the one that even got me to get to this point because of that approach. So you don't have to agree with me, but if you want to win the ideological or cultural battle, you have to convince people that you're right. And you can't do it by just talking to your own side all the time. And that's why Republicans have lost almost every aspect of society. And now we're playing catch up. I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, I agree 100%. Like it's, you know, I'm watching some of the comments roll in right now. And it's funny that these are grown adults who are in the middle of the day trying to find something that they don't like about what you're saying or what I'm saying. And they're commenting on it with clown faces and all these different things as if they're winning somehow. It's like, dude, what are you appeasing? Like, exactly how do you get off on this? You know what I mean? Because like for me, it's like, if like I listen to uh, commentary of people I don't agree with. I mean, I listen to NPR like on my way home. I don't listen to it because I want them to teach me something. I listen to it because I know what their MO is. Like, I know what their agenda is. I know what their angle is. And I completely disagree with everything that they're putting out. But at the same time, like, it's interesting for me to hear kind of where they're coming from. So that way I can know how they reason and how people like them reason. And in my head, I'm kind of thinking of, like, I'm weighing what they're saying and I'm matching and comparing it to like what I believe and trying to objectively consider, like what is right and what is wrong, based on what I hear all around me. There's people on YouTube who I disagree with. I might come across their video because something interesting might pop up on my feed and I might check it out, but I'm not going to go to the comment section and call this person a clown and a libtard and all these different things because they're saying something I don't like. You know what I'm saying? Even like the people who are on our side, like, it just doesn't really seem productive to go onto their video or to their, into their comment sections and try to be pathetic in that way. And so I guess I would end that by saying that it shows more the heart of the individual than it does, anything else. Like, I think that, like, people who do that, they have a sick heart. They have a black heart, and like, they might be miserable. And the way that they find relief is to go into people's comment sections and talk trash as if they are somehow winning. When in reality, it's like, no, you need to repent.
I hear you. Yeah, I don't mind it, but I guess, like, it's good to get some criticism and backlash. It's all good, but I hear what you're saying. I just want to read this one real quick. Tony said, "You're selling yourself down the river. Anomaly disrespecting your Republican fan base is going to get you working back at Starbucks and wondering how you're going to pay the bills again. I've counted 4 times so far that you've disrespected Republicans yet stuck up for liberals." Well, here's what I want to say, Tony, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and maybe you have a point, but I didn't disrespect Republicans. I'm a registered Republican. So you have to understand, anything I say about Republicans, that's me. So I'm not, unless I hate myself, but I'm talking about specific people. I'm not talking about people who make great documentaries or great content. I'm talking about the type of Republican talking heads that are just placeholders and everybody hates them. And that's why all the kids are liberal. There's a reason why 90% of these kids are coming out liberal all the time. Your kids go to school, they come back with blue hair. There's something going on. There's some reason that they're not gravitating towards conservative influencers. It's because the left wing plays this game of being more compassionate, and they're not, and the right wing just acts like dicks all the time. I'm not saying all Republicans act that way. I'm just saying some do. I'm not talking about you, but here's what I find. When I criticize the Republican Party, it's the Republicans that know that the Republican Party is selling them down the river that says anomaly. Thank you so much for talking about that. I feel like I'm alone because the Republicans are printing trillions of dollars like Karl Marx, but nobody wants to talk about it because it's not Joe Biden. It's the Republicans that know Republicans are selling them out that are happy about it, and it's the Republicans that don't want to question their own side that feel like I'm talking about them because they see themselves in what I'm saying. So you might be right, but it's like I go harder at Republicans because at this point, if I always use this example, but I'm going to use it one more time. If I'm the New York Knicks and I'm playing the Lakers are the other side, right? The liberals are the other side at this point. They don't believe what we share. But if I'm talking about a 19-year-old liberal, it's not the same as a 55-year-old man who watches CNN. At that point, he might be a lost cause. But these kids are growing. Most kids turn conservative by the time they hit 26. So I'm not talking about Don Lemon. I'm not telling you to softball Joe Biden. Joe Biden sucks. He deserves all the criticism he gets. I'm talking about the kids. I'm talking about your kids. I'm talking about other people's kids that are still developing that I think deserve to be, met with compassion. And same with Republican kids. I'm talking about 40-year-old grown men Republicans who are talking down to like 19-year-olds and acting like, it's a joke. But long story short, if my team is the Republican Party and I feel like my own team is scoring on my basket, they're almost in a weird way a bigger threat than Democrats because the Democrats are the enemy that everybody knows they're not going to vote your way. They're not going to support you. But what if I told you that some of your favorite Republicans are socialists? You know what I'm saying? Yep. Oh my God. No, they're not. They couldn't be. My favorites aren't socialists. Guys, 2020 was the most socialist year I've ever seen in my life, without the exception of 2021. Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell printed trillions of dollars. You know, that's how do you think inflation's not going to come? They opened up this vortex. Biden poured a bunch of gasoline on it like Joe Biden only would. And now both parties act shocked. The left wing says the experts never saw this coming. The right wing says it's Biden. It's both of them, folks. So I'm not bashing my Republican base. I respect my base. I appreciate my base. I understand that most of my audience is Republican because liberals mostly don't want to listen to this. I'm just saying that I want to challenge our side, not because I hate you or disrespect you, but if we don't get better, I see more losing, and I don't think we can afford to really lose much more. I don't think, I think the pendulum needs to go the other way pretty soon. I'm not interested in losing. I'm interested in challenging the base, not hating on you. And I don't want you to see yourself in Ted Cruz, when I make fun of Ted Cruz.
100%. Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about the last topic. Thanks for staying, folks. We appreciate your presence. Someone said I'm an independent, I'm a Republican. I appreciate everybody, but I don't want people to feel like I'm bashing them directly. I wanted to talk about democracy, and Chad brought it up, and I want to hear what he has to say, because we're told all the time by left-wing and right-wing media, democracy, democracy, we're protecting our democracy, it's for the democracy, and they always reference Ukraine as a democracy. And now I'm not saying Russia's your best friend, and I don't know, what you want to think about all the money going to Zelensky. You can think for yourself. But in general, Ukraine is not a democracy. Let's make that clear. They banned 11 political parties. The opposition party that was on pace to potentially beat Zelensky was removed, and they can't even run. They're seizing assets from their political enemies. They're consolidating the media, like the Communist Manifesto, where they have one media and every media is controlled by the state now. You're not allowed to be opposition media. And they say, well, they're supporting Russia. It's like, well, they're right next to Russia. That would be like if you did a pro-Mexico video on Mexican trade and you defended Mexico on one topic. Now you're eliminated from media. Does that sound like a free country to you? Of course not. So it's not a democracy over there, but we're told it is, and we're told that Democrats want to defend democracy. So I just want to throw it over to Chad, because I know he has some interesting thoughts or questions about that.
Yeah, and it's just so yesterday the New York Times, they released this video on YouTube. It's like 50 minutes long, and it's talking about the threat to our democracy. And a lot of this kind of propaganda has been spewed for a long time. In fact, the word democracy peaked in the mid-1800s after Karl Marx's, which one was it? I think it was the Communist Manifesto. So after the Communist Manifesto was published, the word democracy picked up in literature and publications across the globe, really. And then it peaked again in the early 1900s as Marxism was being taught in colleges and universities in the West. And then it kind of stayed the same as far as, our literature is concerned and journalism. And then it peaked again in the mid 2000s. And so this word democracy is very interesting. Whenever you look at, for example, Friedrich Engels, he said this about democracy. He said democracy, hold on, let me pull it up. He said democracy is a specific form of the dictatorship of the proletariat. And so, like, when you understand that democracy was all along meant to, in a sense, move society into a globalist kind of agenda, it helps you to kind of understand and put it into perspective as to what the elitists mean when they use the word base versus what you think the word actually means, right. if that makes sense. And so, like, they wouldn't push this whole concept of democracy if they didn't at the same time understand that because they control the institutions, they also control public opinion. And so it's meant to kind of give you this illusion of choice, right? So you're constantly being programmed and indoctrinated to think a certain way, to react to a certain, type of stimuli. And it starts from a very early age. By the time you're in school, you're learning this kind of Deweyan education curriculum. You're learning how to be a little social justice warrior, whether you realize it or not, especially nowadays. It's in the shows that you watch, it's on Disney, it's in the music that you listen to, it's in the movies that you watch, it's in the journalism that you consume. On a daily basis, you're constantly being inundated with how to think. You're being like, the whole concept of cancel culture, for example, is meant to, like a religion, scare you out of daring to believe the kind of taboo things that they don't want you to believe. This is the very reason why there's certain videos on YouTube that get age restricted and banned and so on and so forth, because they want to control how you think. And so the same people who are saying that we need democracy are not afraid to cancel opinions that they don't agree with. And so you have to ask the question, do they really want democracy, or do they want to drive society, much like, cattle being herded or sheep being herded, to go the direction in which they want us to go? And I encourage people to look into John Dewey, who wrote extensively about the topic of democracy. They call him the father of modern education. He believed very much in socialism and communism, but he believed that the way that you achieve socialism and communism is not through a fast-paced revolution, like Karl Marx and Stalin and some of the others wanted, but rather that you do it slowly and gradually over the course of time through the education system, which, ironically, Stalin wrote a lot about that. So
you're saying the word democracy was created or was it just popularized by somebody who supported communism?
It was co-opted. Obviously, the word democracy, it precedes Karl Marx. But what I'm saying is, like, the whole concept of democracy from the very beginning was a self-determination of the people, the consensus of the people, as opposed to the ruling of the monarch or the ruling of the aristocracy. So that's what is meant by the word democracy, obviously. But what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, what they resolved to do was to kind of co-opt it in such a way where they assumed to be the kind of brain trust of the will of the people. So it's like, you can't on the one hand say that religion is the opiate of the people, if you follow my riff. You can't on the one hand say that religion is the opiate of the people, while at the same time saying you're pro-democracy. And what I mean by that is, like, you're bashing religion, which is a belief system that certain people hold, right? And so I choose to be a Christian. Nobody forced me to be a Christian. I read the Bible. Christ has done something in my heart. And so for that reason, I believe in the gospel. I have no problem with somebody believing Islam or Hinduism or Mormonism or Judaism or what have you, or no faith. I have no problem with that. I think that you're entitled to believe whatever it is you want to believe. The consequences you'll ultimately suffer, that's between you and God. But I choose to believe in Christ, right? So that is real self-determination. Right. So if I were some kind of thought leader, like a Karl Marx or like a Friedrich Engels, and I'm saying we need democracy, people need to be able to determine their own way and determine their own will, while at the same time bashing everybody who believe in a religion, that's not real self-determination. It's you asserting your will on where you think society ought to go. And right. So it's no difference from Karl Marx back then or our modern day journalists today, who on the one hand are the leaders of cancel culture, while at the same time saying, oh, we need to protect democracy. It's not so much that they are fighting for the consensus of the people. They are wanting to assert their will on what they think the will of the people actually is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So that's all interesting, because I know, in Ukraine, because I didn't really think much about democracy or that word. I mean, obviously I've heard it a bunch. I'm like, oh, that means you get to vote and you get to pick. And I know a lot of Republicans, every time you say democracy, they say it's not a democracy, it's a republic. America's not a democracy, it's a republic. But then you go to Ukraine and I'm like, oh, now I see what the elites mean by what when they say democracy. They don't mean what I think and what everyone thinks democracy means, because they're writing op-eds saying, well, free speech on Twitter is a threat to democracy. And, in Ukraine, other opinions are a threat to democracy. Having a different foreign policy is a threat to democracy. Not getting our money is a threat to democracy. Not allowing media companies to question Zelensky is a threat to democracy. So I'm like, this seems a lot more like authoritarianism and communism than it does a free society. And I think what you're saying, which I'm learning in other topics, the more I read and research, is we believe in America. And this is maybe something that a lot of people are getting, because things are so weird where you think, oh man, this just started happening. This is so new. Like, it was normal 15 years ago, but when you start reading old documents, it's like, it's not that democracy just randomly started being manipulated. You're saying for hundreds of years now, it's been adapted by people who believe in communism and authoritarian rule. And it's not something that just happened last year. It's something that's been a thing.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And thank you for muting me. Sorry for the noise in the background, by the way. But yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right. So with the New York Times piece that came out yesterday, they're saying democracy is under attack. America's on fire, so on and so forth. And their argument to prove their point is to point to the excessive processes that exist in our election system. So, for example, the fact that you have to have an election judge, the fact that you have certain people who are pushing for ID, so on and so forth. So they're saying that the processes we have in place, including the Electoral College, is a threat to democracy, because what it does is it challenges universal enfranchisement, if you will. And so for me, it's, well, exactly is that a threat to democracy? First of all, we don't have a democracy to the point that you just made. We have a constitutional republic, but you do want to secure your elections. You do want to prevent fraud in elections, much like you want to secure your border. You know what I mean? So it's like, to me, it's like, are you arguing that we have absolutely no security at all when it comes to people voting in this country? And that's essentially what they are arguing, but they're framing it because they know that people aren't going to do their research and aren't going to think critically. They're framing it to say that, oh, because you have to show your ID whenever you go vote in order to prevent, somebody voting in your name, that's a threat to your ability to assert yourself in Western society. And I don't know, it's very troubling what's going on in that regard.
Right. And with the ID thing, I thought of this recently because obviously I always knew, like, it's a Democrat talking point. It's a falsity to say, oh, people in inner cities can't afford an ID. Okay, so they can't drive a car, they can't go to a hotel, they can't leave, they can't travel, they can't go to a doctor. You have to scan your ID usually when you go to a doctor's office. I mean, you literally can't function in society without an identification to anything, but you're saying these people can't do it. Well, let's just play a game. I mean, I'm not going to do all of the math in my head, but let's say I'm guessing under 10% or under 5% of people, if even that high, don't have an identification in this country. It's got to be a very small amount. Let's just say that's true. Well, we just sent, I don't know, $50-60 billion to Ukraine. We printed trillions of dollars, and, we've forgiven loans of hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, we're doing all these huge money-making bonanzas where we print money whenever we want to do whatever we want. Big Pharma got $18 billion. How much would it cost to print an ID for everybody in America that doesn't have one? I bet you it costs under $1 billion. I can't imagine it would cost that much. So just do that then. You know what I'm saying? You guys are socialists, right? Just print out an ID and give everyone an ID. But they don't want everyone to have an ID, because if everyone had an ID, then that narrative doesn't stick anymore. So it's almost like they need that to stay, because easily they could fund every non-ID'd person to have an ID, but they don't want people to have identifications, and they don't want people to show an ID to vote, because if it's not racism, and if it was, give those people identifications. They don't. It's such an obvious scam.
Yeah, and what it does is it allows them to kind of occupy the sweet spot, because on the one hand, to your point, they don't want you to be able to assert yourself really in that way, but at the same time, they want to be conceived and perceived by the general public as people who care. Like, look, we're the ones who care about you and we care about democracy, and we care about taking control and power away from the powerful elite and giving it to the people. We're the ones that care about that. Look how hard we're fighting. We're passing this Voting Rights Act. We're passing this act and that act. We're the ones who care. But to your point, I mean, which you made so succinctly, if they really wanted to do that, then they would. But the problem is, like, and what I'm about to say is, it could be construed as controversial, but I don't care, is I don't believe everybody should have the so-called right to vote. I really don't. Like, I feel like if I had my way, which let's just be thankful that I don't, I do think we should bring back litmus tests when it comes to voting. I really do. I don't think that people who don't understand how our government works, what the role of the executive branch is, what the role of the judicial branch is, what the role of Congress is. I don't think people who have a lack of understanding these basic things should be able to pull the lever for who should lead our country and who should lead our local communities in our states. Because you mean to tell me that this individual who is so easily tricked, like a dog chasing a squirrel, by anything that comes out of the mouth of a politician who means harm and who wants to take power and to chisel away at the constitutional role of government, that person has the same right to vote as me, someone who actually cares about, the way in which, the direction in which our country is going. And that's not to say that I believe that everybody on the left has a lack of understanding of how our government works. There's people who are really sharp on the left, right, who understand the Constitution, but at the same time they desire a more egalitarian system. I disagree with them, but I think they should have a right to vote because they understand how the government works.
Right.
But not everybody does, and so I think, like, if it's true that if you're going to become a legal citizen in the United States, you have to take a test. You have to study, how does the American system work?
Right. I was thinking
how does the presidency work? So we make our new neighbors who are coming to our country from abroad. We make these people have a basic understanding of how our system works, and they have to prove that they know how it works. Well, but we don't require the same thing of people who are born here, of people who have graduated from our high schools, right, to have that same basic understanding. It's quite troubling. And so, yes, I do think there should be a litmus test. I think that we've thrown out that idea entirely because it has been conflated with racism, and to some extent rightly so. But I don't think that the fact that it was misused makes the concept of the idea in the first place a bad one, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's funny because when I was younger, the first time I voted, I don't know if I voted for Obama. I probably would have if I was younger, but I don't know that I did. I voted for Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, which in theory, I mean, it's like at this point, I didn't want Hillary to win. I felt like she was evil, and I just kind of fell for Bernie's propaganda. But I was kind of the stereotype of what Republicans think Bernie supporters were, outside of a loser in my parents' basement because I was a young adult who paid my own rent and worked hard. I wasn't in my parents' basement. But besides that, I was that person. I wasn't paying for healthcare. I didn't know anything. Honestly, I had no concept. And this is why I'm so thoughtful when I make my content, because I remember how I used to be. I didn't know anything about taxes. I didn't know anything about anything, really. I just thought he was anti-establishment, and I was voting off this idea that Bernie Sanders was anti-establishment when he really wasn't. He was this little sneak. But in hindsight, I don't think I should have voted, because I wasn't educated at all on anything that matters in politics, and that's why I was so duped. So it's funny because I really was a stereotype at 24, 25. I was exactly who Republican thinks Bernie supporters are, except a little bit harder working. And now in hindsight, it is crazy that me of 7 years ago, could have swayed an election.
No, it's a perfectly set up system that the left has going. And I keep saying the left, and I use that for lack of a better word. Really, it's the global elites. It's a perfect setup system because the thing is, like, they're so entrenched in our education system. Our public education system doesn't teach kids how to think critically. They don't teach our kids the value in preserving the constitutional republic and why it's important. They don't teach our kids the genius of the founding fathers and how they were thinking about world governments over the course of history, and they apply that knowledge and that logic to the concocting of the Constitution. And I would encourage people to look up what G. Edward Griffin has to say about the Constitution. It's the most brilliant take on it I've ever heard. But our kids aren't learning that. They're learning how to be sensationalized. They're learning how to be susceptible to propaganda. They're learning how that their moral virtue is tied up in going along with whatever's coming down the pipelines of journalism versus looking at the journalists who are saying certain things as individuals with agendas and determining whether or not that agenda is in alignment with their own or not. Our kids aren't learning any of that. And so by the time they turn 18, somebody like a Bernie Sanders, somebody like an AOC, somebody like an Ilhan Omar or whomever sounds good to them, because these are people who align with everything that they were taught in public school, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. They're teaching something now called social emotional learning. People in your comment section who are educators would probably know what this is, because they're likely learning it or being taught to teach under the guise of SEL in their own school districts. And what it is it's basically bringing secular religion to our schools. I mean, secular religion has already been in our schools, but they're doing it in a more kind of sinister way, so to speak, especially now that the word critical race theory is such a scary word. So they're trying to teach critical theory, critical race theory, critical gender theory, so on and so forth. They're teaching it under different acronyms and different names now. And so the whole idea, once again, is to build little liberals, globalists or pawns of the state in our public education or public school systems, to where by the time they turn 18 and it's time for you to vote, who you're going to vote for is already determined for you, but you think that you're partaking in democracy. You think you're asserting your original opinions, not knowing that your opinions were shaped for you all along up until that particular point.
Right. And they do a good job, because I knew a lot of deep stuff when I was younger. I did a lot of research, but the propaganda is coming from so many different angles that even if you get through 8 out of 10 of them, my opinions were still being shaped by propaganda. Even though I had a lot of good opinions, I also had a lot of bad ones. I want to say 2 things real quick. First of all, Thrift Golden said, "What's your guess here? Name Anomaly." I want to support him. His name is Chad Jackson. At the end, he'll give you some of his links or where you can find him. And I also want to say, what do you think about, because Republicans right now, if you look at like education demographics, Republicans are less, I'm not saying less educated, but I would say people who don't go to college vote more Republican, and people that are more like college educated women vote more Democrat, because a lot of the colleges are just brainwashing people, and the average plumber or trucker that didn't go to college has more common sense and wisdom than the left. So I guess my question would be, what would you say if Democrats are like, yeah, we do want our voters to be more educated, and they take part of your policy, but they say you have to go to college in order to be educated, and they almost start kicking out voters who tend to vote Republican, that not all, obviously there's millions of Republicans that did go to college, but definitely men and women tend to vote more Republican if they weren't brainwashed in 4 years of college.
No, you hit the nail on the head with the last thing you said, brainwashed when they go to college. The fact of the matter is, like, all of the washed up hippies and free lovers and second wave feminists in the 60s, and Yuri Bizmenov talks about this, who graduated from college, they secured positions for themselves and tenure in our colleges and universities. And so all of that radical stuff that they were talking about and advocating for in the 60s and early 70s, they were then able to clean up the language, if you will, and teach it under the guise of scholarship and academia in our colleges and universities. And so kind of the genius of this all is you did have these kind of salt of the earth, blue collar men who were working in the 60s and in the 70s, the older generation, the adult generation of that particular day, who they didn't want their kids to have to break the earth like they did, to have this plumbing job, to work as an electrician, to work as a truck driver and do such a number on your body. And they wanted to see to it that their sons and daughters went to college so they can get themselves a nice white collar job in the city somewhere, because they wanted better for their children than they had for themselves.
Right.
And this is kind of the deception of it all, not realizing that what you're doing is you're feeding your to the belly of the beast, because they're going, and you have these very, sinister left-wing professors who can't wait to get their hooks into your children, that they might then indoctrinate them to believe the things that they believe, and to go off into their own respective careers and continue to carry on this kind of erosive ideology that's destroying our country. And
Right.
so America was a brilliant idea. It was a great idea. But the fact of the matter is, this idea is coming to an end very soon if we continue down the road that we're going. And that's why it's important that people like you are doing what you're doing. You're not caught up in the propaganda, regardless of where it's coming from, because let's not get it wrong. The Republican and the Democrat Party are the same party. They just are. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at how Marxists, globalists, whatever you want to call them, the cabal, when you look at how they move, they're not afraid to play both sides of the spectrum, to play both sides of the chessboard. And so, because we lack the ability, again, to think critically and to be ever on our guard, it's very easy to insert some kind of sleeper cell, or to insert some kind of controlled opposition person who seems like they are on our side. They're saying the things we like. They're going to the meetings, and they're showing up to the places. All the while, they couldn't care less about preserving the Republic of the United States. You know what I mean? So it's like, again, the whole name of the game is to chop away at personal autonomy, personal liberty, the nuclear family unit, the free market enterprise. The whole name of the game is to slowly chip away at these things. And so the way that one can determine whether or not a politician, an educator, a historian, a journalist, whoever's in a position of shaping public opinion, the way to know whether they're genuine or not is to look at their policies, to look at the things that they're saying, and to analyze what is going to be the net result if we were to go your way, if we were to implement your policies. Will it infringe upon my liberties as an individual, or will it, bring about more liberty, so to speak? That's the basic, most simple test anyone can apply. But the fact of the matter is, we get caught up in cult of personality instead of, asking the basic questions like folks like yourself are doing.
Right. I appreciate it. I guess before we end, my last question is, if there was a test for voting, like you were saying, because obviously like Democrats could co-opt that and then kick out, voters that don't have a college education and say, oh, that's why we're doing it. What would in an ideal world, obviously I think we're unfortunately past that point, but like, or fortunately, if you don't think it's a good idea to some, but like, what would it be? Kind of like a test they give immigrants when they come to America, kind of like you should know Congress, House, Senate, like educate yourself on like a poli-sci sort of thing, so you know how the levers work and what the Constitution is, or yeah.
There's no need to convolute it, or to make it or to politicize it, or to make it something bigger than what it is. Like, I mean, anybody can go on Amazon or to a yard sale, or wherever, and find these flashcards that immigrants use to study for their immigration test, or for the their constitutional literacy test. And the questions are very basic. They ask things like, how many senators are in the Senate? How many, they ask questions like that. And somebody mentioned the Federal Reserve earlier. I mean, that might be a little bit too complex for people, but I do, recommend people look into the Federal Reserve and to gain an understanding of how that works. But yeah, to answer your question, I do think that we do have it figured out. I mean, the immigration, or the process of becoming a citizen of the United States, is abysmal right now. But one of the things that I think they do have right is that you have to take that test. And I feel like the same thing can be applied here in the United States, or at least at the state level when it comes to voting. There's nothing constitutional that prohibits such tests. But I do think that that's something that we need to bring back. The reason we don't bring it back, again, is because it has certain racial connotations to it as a result of the way that it was misused by certain municipalities in the past. And so for that reason, Democrats don't bring it up, obviously, because it's a threat to their agenda, and Republicans don't bring it up because they're afraid of being called out as racist. And so it's unfortunate, but it's such a brilliant idea, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think Republicans don't do a lot of things. They can't even stop expanding government. They run on making it smaller. They make it bigger, but it's like, we'll make it less big than Democrats. And it's like, I guess we got to pick one.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Chad? Thanks for joining me. And a lot of people loved it, so they want to know where they could find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Chad O. Jackson, UncleTom.com, and I think that's it for now.
Right, and the second Uncle Tom 2 documentary. It's not a racial slur, folks. It's the name of a documentary. Okay, so but don't go walking around your town talking about it too much. It's got to be it's got to be like a speakeasy. You got to whisper it to your friends,
Right.
so you're not.
You know what? We got Uncle Tom shirts for sale on our website on UncleTom.com. I advise all white people who are watching your program right now to go to our website and buy Uncle Tom shirts and wear those in public. And if somebody says, "Why are you wearing that shirt? You're a white person. You're not supposed to wear that," say, "It's okay. I can wear it." And then try to get a hold of me on Instagram or what have you, and I'll give you a thumbs up. And you can show that to them, saying, "See, here's a black person who said I
do
can wear
have
this
black
shirt."
friends. I'll tell you, like, dude, look, hold on. You're like scrolling. You're like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You're like,
Hold on,
like,
you know.
see? And then you're on the boardwalk, and like this dude's like, "Yo, who are you, bro?" You're like, "No, I got street cred. I'm
Right.
good."
There you go.
All right, appreciate you, Chad. Thanks for watching. And guys, Dream Rare Podcast. I just want to say something before I end. My fact checker video is pretty much completely done. I think since it's Thursday, I'm gonna drop it on Monday. I'm thinking Monday at like 5 a.m. on mine. Oh, Chad's gone. The webcam went out. Hold on a second. Yeah. My fact checker mini thing that I've been working on is literally almost done. It's going to be out really soon. So Monday, hopefully we make massive waves. I hope people share it and watch it. I did a 30-minute breakdown with music, high quality 4K footage and stuff of a lot of things. I'm really trying to expose the fact checkers and fact check the fact checkers. Who's fact checking the fact checkers? Where are they from? Like, what are they about? I got the information, folks, and I think it's going to be the most damning exposure of fact checkers that's ever been done so far, at least that I've seen. So, and if not, I hope there's one better, because that's great. I hope more people do it. But it's going to be out Monday. I'm going to make the fine tunes. I've been working very hard, hours at night, putting this together with music and great footage. So who's fact checking the fact checkers? I am, I did, and it's going to be very revealing. And hopefully we can get a response from Facebook, Meta, Instagram, YouTube, and Science Feedback, the fact checkers from France that constantly lie, and emailed me and told me exactly how they think. So if you want to get an email when that comes out, because I know you can't always see it on Facebook and YouTube, stayintouchwithme.com. I'm going to put it everywhere, and really excited about it. Thank you guys. Have a beautiful day, and I'll be back very soon. Thanks for hanging out, listening, and